good morning and good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to you wherever you're joining us from today. My name is Juliet Cornford, and I'm a senior consultant in the social enterprise team at the British Council, and we're a delivery partner on the ICR Facility. Before we start, a little housekeeping. I think you are automatically muted, but we do ask you to keep yourself muted when our panelists are speaking. And please, can I encourage you all to post your questions for them in the chat. We really do want today to be an interactive session. And we have 4 exceptional expert speakers with us today that I hope will provoke some lively debate, as well as sharing the lessons they've learned from the ICR interventions that have supported them on their journey. Before I introduce our panelists, we would like to share a short film with you about the ICR facility. Great, thank you. I hope that provides a good introduction to any of you that are completely new to the ICR facility, and we'll have some colleagues at the end of today's session to give us a little bit more information about that. So today's topic is something that definitely creates debate. Legal structures versus legal definition versus recognition. It's a hot topic. And there's a difference between recognition and regulation. Many argue that recognition sends an important signal to the market that it is being taken seriously. That when a sector is growing, it needs to innovate rather than be tied by regulation. But others argue that some social enterprises want greater clarity and recognition as legal entities. It looks different in each context. So today we aim to share with you some examples of how these tensions are playing out in reality. But without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker today. Patrick Klein, who is Head of Sector for DG Grow, Social Economy and Social Enterprise at the European Commission. He published and launched their Social Economy Action Plan in December last year. It's an exciting and ambitious 9-year plan that sets out to create the right conditions for the sector to grow, support, scale and innovate, and increase awareness of the sector's potential. Patrick, a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning or this afternoon. Now it's 4 o'clock in Brussels, and I'm really happy to share with you what we are doing for the social economy and social enterprise, in Europe. And indeed, we have launched an action plan for the social economy that was adopted by the European Commission last December. We can see that the COVID crisis, is not over, and it affects our society, and it will continue to affect our society in the long run. But it does also help us, to make the case, for a more resilient, sustainable, and inclusive, economy in Europe. So let's say that the action plan that we have launched several weeks ago is really timely. We are at a juncture. The recovery is urgent, and so are the digital and the green transition. We have seen that the European population is aging, and the social and healthcare needs needs to be increased. We need to think about the healthcare for the society. Social economy can really offer effective solution to all these challenges. And this is why we have decided to put social economy really at the heart of our European political agenda. What is important to say is that this action plan and the publication of this action plan was really preceded by an extensive dialogue with citizens and stakeholders. Let's say that during more than 1 year and a half, we have been discussing, we had workshops, conferences, online conferences, we sent papers, and we were really looking to co-construct, to co-build this social economy action plan with different stakeholders coming from public authorities or the private stakeholders, really those that are on the ground, social enterprises, social economy organization, to build something that is impactful. So what have we decided to do? What are the key objectives and measures of this action plan? Let's say that it built around 3 main pillars. The first element, the first pillar that is really important for us, and this is where we want to push and we want to have project, we want to develop an enabling framework for the social economy. We have seen in Europe that policy and legal framework needs to be adapted to specific business model, especially for social enterprise. This is why we need to work on state aid, on public procurement, and on taxation, so that they do not have a negative impact on the development of social enterprises. And this is why what we plan to do in the coming months and in the coming year, we want really to reflect on how to increase socially public procurement for social enterprise. How can they benefit from this public procurement? We need to work as well on taxation. How can we adapt, this framework, this taxation framework for social enterprise? This is what we are going to do. The second main element is that if we develop an enable framework for the social economy, we have to open up opportunities for social enterprise as well. For example, by facilitating, access to funding or business support and network. Let's say that especially, let's say, on access to finance, our ambition, is really important. And for the coming years, we really want to increase the support, beyond the estimated 2.5 billion euro that we allocated, during those last 10 years to social enterprise. We want to increase support, financial support for them. And how are we going to do this? We are going to work with banks, we are going to work with guarantee institutions, we are going to work with the philanthropy sectors to co-create dedicated schemes, that will help social enterprise to find the right finance at the right moment. Some are looking for seed finance, others are looking for startup, or they are looking for development finance. This is why it's important, to work with the financial community to help to frame, the right scheme. The third pillar, which is element, is that for us, it's really key to promote a better understanding, of the specificities of the social enterprises. We need to discuss, we need to communicate, we need to work with policy makers, with social partners. We need to make them understand the positive impact of the social enterprises, so that they are better recognized and they are more visible. In few words, let's say that our plans mention about 60 actions. We have, for example, 10 key action, and I just want to name some of them that are important and that are really linked to the 3 pillars that I have just mentioned. First of all, we want to develop, a new EU social economic gateway, and this will provide a clear entry point for social economy stakeholders, other relevant actors and individuals seeking information on relevant EU funding, policies or initiatives. This will be done next year. We want to work with member states. with countries that are part of the European Union to develop what we call a recommendation on developing the framework condition so that social enterprise can thrive in each member state of the European Union. For this, we will do some we will accompany we will create, some guidance documents. We will have some training courses for public officials on various topics. And what we are going to do, we are going to communicate. We will launch, for example, new products as well, under different programs really dedicated to social enterprises. And what we want to do is especially tackling youth. We are going to create a youth entrepreneurship policy academy that will be launched next year. And this will seek really to increase the appeal of social entrepreneurship among young people and to ensure that social economy businesses are present in entrepreneurship education curricula. This is something that is important for us. In 2022, this is the European Year of the Youth, and we know that youth people want to develop projects that are impactful. They want to give, their job, a sense, a meaning. So again, this is what we want to do. We want to push, really young people to be aware of that the social economy, can be a good opportunity for them to be impactful. So again, a youth entrepreneurship policy academy will be developed, and we are already working on this. And just to conclude, this brief presentation, I think that this is what the European Commission wants to do. But we know something, that all the action that we propose, can be interesting, can be impactful, but they can only be successful if the ownership of this action, are taken by stakeholders, public stakeholders, private stakeholders. It's important. We need to work really with stakeholders to continue to work. And this is why we are communicating with them, and we want to keep, the momentum for the social enterprise really in all our communication efforts at EU level. For example, we will have, a big conference that will take place, in Strasbourg, in France, in May. And this is where we will invite stakeholders to have workshops, to communicate, and to discuss about success story, to share, their practices, because this is how we are really going to build a kind of European community for social enterprise. Thank you. I do not hesitate, to raise any question. I'm happy to join you this afternoon to present you, this policy that I'm sure will continue to be very high, in our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And it's so exciting to see this action plan emerging, and some really important points here that I'm sure we will get to in the questions. And some of those points for me really resonate around the process and the importance of consultation and co-design. And I think that also provides us with a great segue into our next speaker, Dan Gregory from Social Enterprise UK, who I am sure will talk about some of those policy levers that you are also striving to grow. Dan Gregory is Director of International and Sustainable Development at Social Enterprise UK, the representative body for the sector in the UK. Dan has advised governments, departments around the world on the development of social enterprise policies and has led research into social enterprise in over 20 countries, from Brazil to Sudan, in partnership with the British Council. A very, very warm welcome to you today, Dan.
Hi, thank you, Juliet. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you, Juliet, to British Council, to colleagues, the partners involved in the project, and also to Patrick. It'd just be, it'd be nice, I think, to congratulate Patrick on the EU's action plan, which is fantastic, really good example of a comprehensive, evidence-based, thoughtful approach to supporting social enterprises. So really good to see that commitment from the EU. And we hope to be involved in some way in supporting the development and learning from that over the coming years. So thank you, folks. My name's Dan. I'm, as Juliet says, I lead our international work at Social Enterprise UK. Social Enterprise UK is a membership body for social enterprises. So we are driven by the needs of our members. We're here to support our members and to do what we think can help them best. We've been around 20 years or so this year. We've grown to over 3,000 members, but which has taken time. And we do a range of different things to help social enterprises to thrive and grow and develop. But mainly domestically, mainly in the UK, but increasingly we've been working around the world, as Juliet says, and often with the British Council and with other partners in 20, 30, 40 plus countries around the world. And it's been, fantastic to learn from countries in many different continents, in Southeast Asia particularly, more recently in Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, but also in Europe, South America, Asia, and all over the world, really. So I think our job is to connect, to share experience, to learn and to help grow this kind of global movement and global community. I just have a few slides to help me remember what I wanted to say, really. So not too many, so don't worry. But the first one really is to introduce our work, which has often been based around research and surveys of social enterprise to understand who these businesses are, what they do, how they work in different countries. So please have a look at that. There's 20 or so reports on the British Council website and on our website, which tells you in each of the countries about the research that we've undertaken and shows a really positive picture of vibrant businesses all over the world, delivering for people and planet, helping communities, optimistic, growing, led by diverse groups of people, working in really different communities. So please look at that. But the reason why I wanted to mention that today is because I think it's really important that any policies to support social enterprise and strategies, it's really helpful if they can be led by evidence. In many instances, of course, what we really need is commitment and passion from our politicians and our leaders who just get this and fall in love with social enterprise and think, this is actually the future of business. These are businesses that exist for the purpose of supporting people and planet. And often we do have that, but even with that passion and with that commitment, politicians and officials and public servants still need to know, well, how can we support these businesses? And that should be based on evidence and understanding of the actual needs and situation that these enterprises face on the ground. So the research we've done, I think, can be important, and others have done similar research in other countries, in Europe and further afield, to understand what are the barriers faced by social enterprises, what are their challenges, what are their ambitions. And this is just one example of a graph from one of our pieces of research, which says, what were the top 10 barriers to sustainability for social enterprises? I'm not even sure which country this is, to be honest. And you can see that some of it's around money, some of it's around investment, some around procurement, some around staff, skills, premises. But you can get a sense of what are the most important and what are the least important. And you can look at secondary data and say, well, is this for all the same for smaller businesses or startups or in rural or urban areas, to start to get a picture of what the pressing challenges are. So we've often used that evidence, and we are delighted when other governments, politicians use the evidence available to help inform their policies and strategies. So I think that's a really important kind of first point that I'd like to make is not just to make up the policies, which any good government official would be trying to base their policies and ministers and would base their policies on evidence, but that evidence is not always available. So it's often an important first step, I think, for us. On to the next slide, please. I've tried to summarize kind of the 10 or so things that we often see in many countries. Now, this is not about one country. This is a kind of pattern that you start to see across the world. And in some countries, finance might be the top challenge. In others, it might be the public sector, where public sector commissioning is a really important part of the mix. In others, it might not be, where there's not a strong public sector. But overall, these are the kind of 8, 9, 10 top challenges that you often see facing social enterprises, which then in turn leads us to think, well, what policies and strategies could we put in place to help with those? So you can see that some of them, actually, the first two are very much around, what is this? What is a social enterprise? Who are these things? A minister might say, I know about the public sector, I know about the private sector, I kind of maybe know about philanthropy and charities and voluntary work, but what's this other thing, social enterprise? So a lot of the challenge for us is often kind of overcoming kind of barriers to understanding and defining it, making people aware of it, and starting that journey of falling in love with it. So you can see the top three, they're really all about understanding. But then we get into kind of access to markets and money, into more practical things around workspace, environment, legal forms, tax, workforce, etc. So, you know, in each country it's different. These often are shared across countries, but, you know, I think really good policies and strategies developed in different countries based on the appropriate evidence in each country. On to the next slide, if that's okay, please. Here's just a couple of examples, and I should really add Patrick's action plan into here as well, of the next point I wanted to make, which is, I think these are all examples from Canada. And Canada, at the kind of state level, has a really advanced and really impressive commitment to developing approaches to supporting social enterprises. So you can see here, I think Manitoba, Ontario, I can't remember what the other one was, it might be Quebec, I think, I'm guessing from French top left, that there's each area has had a really strong commitment to creating strategies to support social enterprise. But importantly, these are strategies, and like Patrick's action plan, they're kind of overarching approach. It's not an individual isolated policy. So it's not just, here's a new fund, or here's a new legal form, or here's a new training course, or we're going to do this next week. Yeah, it's kind of really thoughtful, as I said about Patrick's work, considered, evidence-based policies that try and address all those 8, 9, 10 issues together to make a kind of consistent and coherent strategy. And I think that's really impressive when that happens well. Not that we're against individual policies, but you know, social enterprises are very diverse in their needs, they're very different, and I think, you know, when a government can take into account all those needs and bring them together under a kind of coherent strategy, that's where we've seen the most success. So yeah, I'm always delighted to follow up with those interested. Our job, as I say, is to share information, and happy to share examples of what we've seen in Malaysia and Canada and France and Scotland, places where you can start to look at what were the successful elements of the strategy and what worked well and what didn't work quite so well. On to the next slide, please. Just getting into a little bit more detail on the actual policies, and I think today we're probably will inevitably focus a little bit on legislation and the role of the law and government in kind of regulating. And that's, you know, I work in Jamaica. I'm really delighted that Charmaine's here today, and Charmaine is much better placed than me to tell you about the developments in Jamaica. But actually, a lot of the focus in Jamaica has been about a new law for social enterprise and new legislation that's enabling to social enterprise. But I think it's also important to remember that governments have a number of different sort of levers at their disposal when it comes to policy. The first one, I think, is kind of money. You know, often if you ask a business what its main challenge is, it will say money. Now, that might be income, revenue, capital, funding, finance, equity, debt, crowdfunding, philanthropic gifts, all sorts of different types of money that might be relevant to social enterprises. But they will often say money is the big challenge. And governments have created and can create kind of funds, investment funds, grant funds, subsidies, different types of blended finance to support social enterprise. And we've seen those in many countries around the world, and some have worked really well. Some of them have had teething problems and haven't quite been structured right to meet the demand, or maybe the evidence wasn't quite clear and the fund didn't quite work. And we can all learn from those kind of lessons. I think from, you know, Japan, where they're inventing a whole new fund. Canada, there's an £800 million fund. In the UK, we had Big Society Capital as a sort of £600 million investor. And all of those things, none of them are perfect, but we can learn from all of them. The second one, I think, is regulation and the law, where the law, of course, can be a really important hard lever to make a difference to supporting social enterprise. Introducing new legal forms, changes to procurement law, changes to, Patrick referred to state aid law, or you know, what government can do with subsidies to support business and what it can't do. You know, we've had a new legal form in the UK, and we've seen that developed in other countries, which is part of the development of social enterprise kind of support, but not, you know, it's just one in a range of things. Also, my picture of a donkey is around kind of incentives. You can use the tax system, you can use more softer kind of ways of encouraging people to buy from social enterprise or invest in social enterprise. And finally, with the elephant, the kind of nudges approach is the kind of, you're not using the hard levers of money or the law or tax, but encouraging actors in the economy and society to take steps to support social enterprise.
Super, thank you very much.
There, I can see you, Juliet. I think there's one more slide, is there? Just to say, I don't know, was that it? Oh yeah. So yeah, please follow up with me in future. I'm really happy. Social Enterprise UK is happy to share things that we've learned and to learn more. And I think we've got kind of eight or so lessons on where policy has worked really well and where it hasn't. And I won't go into these now for time, but you can see that you know, there's a lot of factors that lead to good policies and good strategies, and some that get in the way. And I think you know, our job is to share that experience to improve in the UK our sort of ecosystem of support for social enterprise, but to make sure that the lessons are learned all around the world. So thank you very much for the chance to be part of this, and I hope to continue to try and be helpful in future. Thanks.
We're going to move to a few questions now. So if I could ask Dan, you to stay on camera, and to invite Patrick back on camera now, just to take a few questions. Dan, one quick question, which I hope is fairly straightforward for you to answer, from Satya Papak, asking whether what you were presenting was a global perspective or a UK perspective about the challenges and the factors for sustainability.
That was global. Yeah, as I say, different in other countries, but that's kind of a top 10 which we've gathered from our work in 20, 30 countries or so.
Yeah, great. Okay. And Frances has her hand up with a question. Frances, would you like to share your question? Are we able to do that? Or does it need to go into the chat? Okay, maybe Frances, you can post your question and I'll share it with me. So a couple of other questions, just to get us started. I mean, people are talking about building ecosystems and developing strategies, but for yourselves, Patrick and Dan, from your experience, I mean, how do you start that process? What are the best ways for engaging policymakers? I think sometimes for people whose countries or ecosystems are at a very nascent stage, how do you kickstart that? How do you get those policymakers excited about what it is that you're talking about?
Maybe Dan to begin.
Thanks, Patrick. Very kind. I mean, I emphasise the importance of evidence, which of course is important. I think the British Council has also played a really important role in trying to kind of, I don't know what's the right way to put it, sort of to charm and to seduce ministers into falling in love with social enterprise by making them see real examples and taking them on a tour, and actually kind of understanding it's not just a concept or a theory or an idea someone had about what if business was a bit nicer. These are real businesses that are making a real difference to people's lives, and I think that kind of first-hand experience is often what kind of locks someone's commitment in, I think. The other thing that you could where you could start, and it's a different starting place, I think, is often on looking at government support for business more widely. And actually, you often find that social enterprises are sometimes almost unintentionally excluded from access to wider business support. So in the UK, for instance, we have many £1 billion worth of programs to support business in times of COVID, but other times for innovation, for research, for subsidies for taking on certain workers and so on. And sometimes social enterprises don't always access those as easy as they might. So one place to start is about that level playing field and saying, well, actually, can we just make sure that cooperatives, community interest companies, trading charities, their businesses operating in markets often, are they accessing this support from government, or is that government support just going to kind of big business or family-owned business or PLCs and not getting to social enterprises who are kind of legitimate recipients of it, but maybe don't know about it or just haven't been able to access it? So kind of another angle in is just to kind of ask about the level playing field, and are we getting equal access for some of the businesses in our kind of family?
Super, thanks, Dan.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I think that I think that for us, I mean, the European Commission, what was really important is really to go, on the ground and to see what's happening. There are so many success stories, best practices to exchange, in Europe, and this is what we wanted to do. And I remember maybe just one example. We decided to launch several years ago a project that was called European Socio-Economic Regions scheme. So this is where we invited, let's say public authorities, to invite people from the Commission and to gather social enterprise network, in their region and to discuss about the topic. And this is where we see, the added value. We see the visibility. Our policymaker can understand, what are the added value, of social enterprises. For example, to tackle unemployment, to focus on the green transition, on ecological transition, and it's just connecting the dots. I would say this is really important. This is why we should really, put people together and to understand what they're talking about. Because I agree with you. I mean, sometimes, if you go in a member state in the European Union, if you say, yes, we want to promote social enterprise, then they say, what is a social enterprise? Is it a charity or what kind of legal form it is? It's important, to make them understand, the various, for example, legal form that a social enterprise can take and the various added value it can bring to economy and the social cohesion, in our union. So we have been to at least, I remember, more than 50 or 60 high-level meetings, in member states, and this is how we could create this kind of synergies with actors and make those public authorities understand why they should develop, social enterprises. And maybe, and I think more than maybe, I think that this is the kind of schemes that help us to frame, the social economy action plan that has been just released. So really, in a nutshell, really putting people together, connecting the dots, exchanging and discussing. It's already, a big beginning.
Thanks very much, Patrick. And just to explain to the audience, if you want to ask a question and your hand is raised, we can unmute you this end, but you also need to unmute yourself so that we can hear you. Francis, will we try again? If we unmute you, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? Not working. Okay, I'll ask the question. So Francis is asking, he says his question is based on the challenges of social enterprise. What can be done to create more awareness of the idea of social enterprise in Africa? And do you think outsiders, NGOs, UNs, British Council among them, can do it better than the insiders, government, ministry or local volunteers? Thank you. So maybe Dan, you kick off with that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously best when it's done by really credible, convincing people from local communities and not from someone from outside the country, and probably not from someone from the government or, with apologies to Patrick, from a kind of institution, because, some people have positive and negative views of the government of their day in their country, and some people probably can be more persuaded and impressed and inspired by people either working on the ground in communities rather than a kind of functionary like myself or Patrick, but also by kind of people that they like maybe know anyway, so kind of almost celebrities as well. So I mean, a lot of the people that we know that have been really successful at explaining social enterprise, and maybe they don't need to be like a film star, but we have people that we've worked with that you see in Hollywood films that have been helping us to promote social enterprise through little videos, or in the old days, Jamie Oliver, the TV chef who you saw on TV, was talking about social enterprise, helped communicate it. Fashion designers talking about kind of ethical fashion, but actually it may just be kind of people that are sort of near the public eye. So recently we had a session with our friends from Social Enterprise Ethiopia and Ghana, and Brookty in Ethiopia is a kind of she's known in the TV world and the film production world. She's kind of you know, maybe not a celebrity, but she's known and well known in the industry, and she can be a really good advocate for social enterprise. And I think that kind of, you know, having real local voices that have maybe been there, that are involved in businesses, that they can talk about their own experience, you know, that's clearly the most inspiring way to do it. But of course, it also helps if you have Patrick and ministers and government and others, you know, talking about it as well. I think the main step is spreading awareness of it as even as an idea in itself. You can say, well, what do I like it, or what is it, or who? Tell me more. But actually, just getting it across in the first place is the first hurdle, because people tend to, once they understand it and they see it, then they kind of do often fall in love with it. But yeah, there's other ways too. You know, the media, working with the media, working with universities, getting into syllabuses, local media and national media. We have our Places program in the UK, which is about kind of really highlighting work going on in certain cities and towns that are leading the way on social enterprise. And increasingly, SUK's work has turned to kind of awareness raising, communications, and we leave the stuff around access to finance a bit more to others, or the stuff around incubation or acceleration to others, or social value measurement. And we focused a lot on how do you get people to have heard of this stuff? How do you get it in the supermarkets on the shelves? How do you realize that when you buy Christmas presents, you know, actually there's hundreds of different Christmas presents you could buy from social enterprises to give to people. So yeah, there's lots of different ways, but I think that's what our focus has really been on that recently.
Thanks, Dan. I think that's some really good examples there of how those kind of blended approaches are helping to build, you know, recognition, whether they're consumer campaigns or whether it's other kinds of interventions that sit around that. I think that's a good example. I mean, both of you kind of lightly touched as well in terms of this evidence base. And thinking about COVID and the pandemic, I wonder if you think that you know, is this the time for social enterprise? Has social enterprise proven as a result of the pandemic how quickly it's been able to pivot and respond and prove itself in terms of addressing some of these complex social needs? Patrick, maybe you'd like to take a go at that one.
No, but I think that I totally agree with you. I mean, it was always time, you know, for social enterprise to be high on the agenda, but maybe more now than ever. If we see, you know, some good examples that are spreading, you know, in Europe. Just one, you know, from my country, you know, from France, we have seen, you know, some cooperative, you know, just switching totally, you know, their change and creating masks, you know, for their local community, you know. One example, we have seen a lot of associations that decided, you know, to work and to help, especially those who are in rural areas to tackle, you know, the issue. Or a social enterprise that is in Brussels that I know that decided, you know, to help especially young people that could not find any computer because they were online. You see, we see that this is the kind of example that clearly shows that social economy is a proximity economy and is a successful economy. So again, more than ever, I think that we see that that the COVID, you know, maybe has, let's say, if I can use this word, help us to understand and to push, you know, social economy to be more present, you know, in everyday life, you know, of the citizens.
Super, thanks very much, Patrick. Okay, just in terms of keeping us to time, I think that was, you know, that was really good to get that kind of the European view, the international view, and to start picking up some of the challenges and the patterns that we kind of see emerging, I think, around the world. Now I think we will take a deep dive into two of the ICR interventions that have been supported by the facility. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you today Charmaine Brimm. She's a technical specialist on socio-economic development for the Planning Institute of Jamaica Agency of Government, leading the process of policy formulation on economic, social and environmental issues. She's driven the establishment of a policy committee within her department to facilitate dialogue and coordination for the development of social enterprise sector in Jamaica. She's been a driving force behind this piece of work that has emerged through the ICR intervention that is now working towards and leading up to a new legal status act for Jamaica. So very, very warm welcome to you, Charmaine.
Thank you so much, Juliet, for that welcome. Thank you so much as well to the British Council for this invitation to be a part of this webinar. And it's so good to see Dan Gregory as well. This morning, my presentation will focus on a couple of things. So may I ask you to just move to the next slide, please? So I will give you a quick background to the ICR intervention in Jamaica, just having a look at the overall social enterprise landscape. We will then look at the process towards formalization of the sector, and then look at what the sector will look like given the ICR facility intervention. So as Juliet mentioned before, the Planning Institute of Jamaica is the foremost planning agency of the government that seeks to initiate and coordinate the development of policies, plans, and programs. So it is within that context that I want us to understand the role of government in supporting the establishment of the social enterprise sector in Jamaica. Could you go to the next slide, please? The following slide as well. The next slide, please. So just to say that the concept of social enterprise is not one that is new to Jamaica. In fact, that the concept has been touted around for years. We're talking about over 20 years. And we have seen the initiation of social enterprise in the formation of building societies that were established at the time to address the issue of providing affordable housing to Jamaicans. And we have seen quite a number of other actors in the space who have been doing work to support the social economy, and just a wide range from academia, private sector, etc. And so the Jamaica social enterprise sector has been mapped, it has been assessed. However, social enterprise has not been legally defined. It therefore means that the actors within the space have adopted a definition that suited their own purpose. And so what we found is that we had actors who positioned themselves within three contexts. You had those who identified as for-profit social enterprises, you had those identifying as not-for-profit SEs, and those who identified as charities. Next slide, please. Now, it therefore meant that the types of entities that were currently self-identifying and that were being considered as social enterprises were registering under some existing legal form. So you had those who were registering with the Companies Office of Jamaica, either as companies limited by guarantee without share capital or with share capital. You had companies, partnerships, sole proprietors. You had those who were registering as benevolent societies or cooperatives. And then, of course, you had those with no legal registration, such as community-based organizations, partners, and individual entrepreneurs. Now, what is noteworthy is that all of these entries did not fit the core criteria for social enterprises based on international best practices. And in particular, sole proprietors and individuals could not meet the requirement for inclusive governance. So it is issues such as these that made the existing legislation not fit for purpose. And this is because in the absence of any legal definition being in place, it meant that there was no impediment to individuals holding him or herself out as, social entrepreneurs or as social enterprises. Next slide, please. Recognizing, could I get the next slide? Thank you. Now, the review of Jamaica's existing legal framework therefore revealed that there were several legal barriers to its growth and development. And some of these barriers included the lack of a clear and established definition for social enterprises, the absence of appropriate monitoring and oversight of the governance and operations, and this resulted in the sector developing in a highly informal and fragmented way. There was inconsistent interpretation of local tax and charities law by administering agencies, and this resulted in many social enterprises not qualifying for favorable tax treatment under the Jamaican Charities Act. There was also the lack of standard measurement metrics and inadequate data collection and analysis. We also saw limited access to credit and other funding, including the inability of entities to access services, for instance, under the newly established Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, which provided two platforms, one being a crowdfunding platform, and the other, which is not yet operational, will be an equity trading platform. And so, can you go to the next slide, please? And so, with these barriers, it therefore resulted in the inability of social enterprises to scale. Now, I would have mentioned before that there has been quite a bit of work being done, which includes work that was being done by the private sector. One such entity who rolled out a social enterprise boost initiative program was the Jamaica National Foundation. Based on their work and the recognition of the legal gap, they initiated discussions with the Planning Institute of Jamaica, and this led to us establishing a policy committee. The purpose of that committee was to start the dialogue towards getting legislation in place. So this led, of course, to the advocacy by us with the ministry with responsibility for one of Jamaica's key policies, which is the MSME, that's micro, small, and medium term entrepreneurship policy, that was actually being reviewed at the time that the discussions about a framework for social enterprise was taking place. We were invited, therefore, to be a part of the group that was looking at updating that policy, and so this led us to develop a narrative for social enterprises to be included in this policy. Now, at the time, the ministry, based on the review and update of that policy, went ahead and established a national policy implementation committee with the purpose of giving coordination, monitoring, and oversight to implementing the policy activities. Therefore, the policy committee that was established in 26 was asked to be reconstituted as a social enterprise working group. And that working group would now have the remit to guide the implementation of policy activities in relation to the new chapter that was added and approved by Cabinet, which is focusing on social value creation. It is the working group, therefore, that now focused on doing the work towards development of the legislation, which included doing extensive research and having national consultations. Next slide, please. And this is what resulted in our application to the Investment Climate Reform Facility to support the work that we were doing. Now, what the technical support that we accessed through the ICR facility focused on three areas: the development of a draft legal status for Jamaica's social enterprise sector, the development of a marketing strategy and resource mobilization plan, as well as hosting capacity building workshops for government facilitators, private sector, and social entrepreneurs to just have everyone in the space to of course, get the conversation going, to increase the awareness and for them to understand their role in the process. Next slide, please. Now, then the other slide, thank you. Next one, please. Now, under the ICR facility, I would just want to walk us through now some of the tenets that emerged coming out of the support. Now, the primary objective of the work that was done, of course, was to try to address the challenges that were facing the sector by encouraging government to adopt the various measures in favor of promoting the sector, developing and bringing visibility to the social economy and its operations, solely by creating a favorable legal environment for its business development. Next slide, please. Now, as we went about doing the work, you know, part of the research meant that we had to also look at what was going on in other jurisdictions outside of Jamaica in respect to legal forms. What were the kind of legal structures that were being in place? And so as part of our research, we looked at in jurisdictions such as Canada, we looked at the UK, we looked at the USA. and we recognized that there were some particular features that we thought would be useful within the Jamaican context. One such being the community interest company. That type of legal form we thought would be something that could be adopted, and therefore a lot of these tenants were included in what we have positioned to be under our Draft Legal Status Act. Next slide, please. And so I will just quickly share with you, now that we have a Draft Legal Status Act in place, some of the tenets that has been positioned within that framework, of course, includes the definition. Whereas we had a definition within the policy, the MSME and entrepreneurship policy framework, it would have needed to be supported by some criteria. You know, we talk about giving the definition teeth. And so this Draft Legal Status Act would outline what are some of the qualifying criteria that would help to recognize a social enterprise. It also included how the enterprise would report, how they would list on the JSC, etc., as well as bringing attention to the social enterprise status. Next slide, please. Just to point out some of the key objectives and outcomes. So with a legal framework in place, it meant that we would get greater recognition of the sector. Of course, with the legal status now being in place, we think it would therefore lead to the introduction of a simple and more efficient process for registration. Some of the other spin-offs, of course, would include bolstering the governance capacity and the record-keeping capacity of the social enterprises. Next slide, please. And just lastly, to say that, you know, in terms of the support that we got for the development of a marketing strategy, now we know that some of the main levers towards ecosystem development speaks to policy and regulations, looking at information and network. And so part of the purpose of the marketing strategy would therefore help to increase market access for social enterprises, to increase the level of awareness about the sector and to promote understanding of the sector, certainly at the macro as well as the grassroots levels. Could you just go to the next slide? And I am wrapping up in 1 minute, Juliet. Could you go to the next slide and the other slide? So in closing, I'll say that with the support that we have gotten, the new operating framework for the social enterprise ecosystem, therefore, would be one that had a robust policy framework, supported, of course, by the legislation, that would therefore lead to things like the increasing access to financing and the other kinds of capacity support that the sector needed, and therefore giving us a robust social enterprise network. So I will stop there, and of course I'm open to any questions regarding the work in Jamaica. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Charmaine. And you know, it's been an incredibly impactful piece of work what you've done in Jamaica there, and so much to say. So a tough gig to squeeze that into 10 minutes, but I hope we can pick up on some more of the details when we reach our questions. So, and some great examples that have illustrated what our previous two speakers have said about this co-design, co-working process where you're designing things together that are fit for purpose. So, thank you very much, and I'm sure the slides will be made available afterwards for people that want to spend a few more minutes digesting the brilliant content there.
Thank you so much.
Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our final speaker, Edwin Zu-Cudjoe from Social Enterprise Ghana, the national network of social enterprises and hubs operating in Ghana. Edwin is also the founder of the Social Farm Company Limited, an agribusiness and a social enterprise in Ghana that connects smallholders and commercial farmers to farmland and water bodies, forming in-grower cooperative schemes where they can access mechanised services, support, training and access to markets. So it felt really great, Edwin, to complete our final panel of speakers by bringing it back to the voice of the social entrepreneur. And so you're very welcome, Edwin. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Juliet, and thanks to the ICR Facility for the great and immense support they've given to us as Social Enterprise Ghana. To mention, Social Enterprise Ghana is the national network of social businesses that are operating in Ghana. the national body of about 800 social enterprises operating across Ghana. And as a network, we have solely championed the cause for social businesses and social entrepreneurs across Ghana and engaged relevant stakeholders, especially government, to ensure that there is that legal and policy framework for the operations of social enterprises. And from 2016, when we've seen a whole call of young people interested in using business strategies to address Ghana's social, environmental, and economic challenges, that business is not solely for profit, but you can use business as a strategy to address Ghana's challenges with regard to poverty and make a lot of impact through these business strategies. And it's in the midst of that we call on several stakeholders, and happy to say that the likes of British Council, the likes of Busak Fund, Ghana Star Foundation, and the various social entrepreneurs came together to draft the Ghana Social Enterprise Policy. And with immense support from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, we came together to ensure that there is a policy framework that governs the works and operations of social businesses and also drives incentives and support systems to these businesses. Now, throughout all the journey, a lot has changed, and we have seen that there is a lot of interest, both local and global, towards social businesses and ensuring that they make a lot of impact. And it is in that regard that we came back to the European Union, the ACP facility, through the request to the Investment Climate Reforms Facility that we need to re-engage government and ensure that this draft policy work is renewed and revised. And through your support, we have gone back to the Ministry of Trade and Industry with great reception, thanks to the Deputy Minister, Honorable Herbert Krapa, the Chief Director, Mr. Nimo, and our very good friend Stella, and the others. And we, through your facility, have been able to engage other government agencies, 10 of them, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Education, and other government agencies, including the National Service Secretariat, all coming on board to revise and mainstream even areas of gender, procurement of social goods that government needs to give quota to procurement of social goods and products and services for social entrepreneurs. Throughout this engagement, we have made mention of the need for the adoption of the Ghana Social Enterprise Policy, that we feel that will provide a legal form to social businesses and ensure that they can operate in a well-regulated manner. Beyond that is the various incentive packages that we feel the businesses in the social enterprise ecosystem require, be from areas of training to financing of social businesses and provision of quotas, so that these social goods can be procured in the milieu of challenges that we find ourselves. And we have seen that the support from the ICR facility has helped us improve this document. And just to mention that bringing along all these various stakeholders, ensuring that we organize even online focus group discussions that brought various stakeholders, the social businesses, policymakers, media attention to the work that we are doing, and also one of the missing elements, research and ensuring that there is data backing all the work that we are doing. Bringing all these diverse stakeholders on board has helped us engage relevant government institutions to ensure that there's that policy work that supports social enterprises in the work that they do. In short, we will say that the ICR facility has supported our work and helped us throw much more light on the works of social enterprises, showcase the works of the various members that we have, and provide sensitization information to the whole general public that the more than 100,000 social enterprises that are operating in Ghana and the impact that they are creating in job creation, in protecting the environment, require incentive support systems. And a policy document, the Ghana Social Enterprise Policy, will be one great way to support and move forward this whole ecosystem. So we are grateful to you at the Investment Climate Reforms Facility, our good friends at British Council, especially the likes of Honorable Chikudi, our good friends Andrew. We are grateful to you, Irene Dankwa, and the great team, be it at the British Council, be it at Social Enterprise UK. We are grateful for your support in making us progress. The way forward is the continuous engagement of various government agencies and the good reception we've received from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and their continuous availability for us to ensure that it's not just about advocacy and making noise, but we have a document that supports the work of social enterprises. So continuous engagement of the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the like-minded other ministries like the Ministry of Finance, and ensuring that our requests around the creation of the Ghana Social Enterprise Fund that directly invests into social enterprises and ensures that the works of social enterprises are well supported and invested in. These and others are the way forward from the ICR facility. Almost always important is the work of the female and the gender aspect of the social enterprise work, as well as those that are physically challenged. And we feel that the works of all these demographics need to be well trumpeted and ensure that the policy work that we have done, mainstreaming areas of gender and environment, and ensuring that inclusion of even people with disability is well enshrined in the policy document, is one of the things that we believe in our way forward will ensure that this is well carried out and executed. The training and support to the various social enterprises is one of the things that, as a business association and a business network, we will work with relevant stakeholders, be it the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program, in ensuring that we drive home the skills, the social innovation skills that these social entrepreneurs need, that they are able to address our own challenges that we find in the ecosystem. Finally, the work of advocacy and engagement of policymakers for the adoption of a policy work always requires different stakeholders on board, be it the donors, be it the advocates, be it the entrepreneurs themselves. So we always call on relevant stakeholders to be on board as we ensure that this policy work is well adopted in support of social enterprises. Thank you all, and I wish you all the best.
Super, thank you so much, Edwin. And I just think some really brilliant and practical examples of how you've actually been doing stuff on the ground. I think sometimes with policy work, it feels as if it's a bit up there and out there, but that was really tangible and brilliant to hear about the work that you've been doing there on the ground. So could I invite all of our panelists now to bring their cameras back on, and we will take some further questions from the floor. And Edwin, I'm going to continue with another question for you. We've had quite a few questions from people framed around young people, and we often hear that social enterprises are young people's movement. You know, how do you see young people being empowered to make it or make changes at a policy level, and why is it important? How are we engaging young people?
Yes, so the challenges that we find from the impact of COVID-19 has seen this rippling effect on young people in the vulnerable communities. They have been the most impacted, and they feel that they need to be the solution to the challenges that they find themselves in, and providing them with tools that these business models of social enterprise is just not principally about making profit destroying the world, but it's about protecting the world, making impact alongside financial returns. So they have seen themselves that they have the tools to be the solution to their own challenges. And across board, we've seen the high interest in this social enterprise model from young people that they are their own solution. So how did they become much more creative, innovative, and empathetic in addressing these challenges that they find themselves in? And we've seen a great deal of them in Ghana, the likes of Tractor, Zaco, addressing their own challenges, be it around food security, be it around provision of health, that they have the tools to address those challenges. And I want to commend those great social businesses that we want to see a lot more of these in addressing Ghana's and Africa's economic challenges in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks, Edwin. I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because when we talk about policy, we often think that policy sits with departments of trade and investment. But you know, actually, as a young people's movement, maybe we need to be spending more of our time thinking about how it sits within education and how education systems are preparing young people to think about these as kind of career options. But thank you, great question. Okay, Patrick, how do you think social enterprises are potentially important partners in helping governments to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? Do you think they are something that sit across government and could be a critical success factor?
I think indeed social enterprise can be of great support, you know, for government to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We all know that we are facing, you know, a lot of challenges here, and that we need to find, you know, really all the tools, all the actors ready to help us, you know, to achieve, you know, these Sustainable Development Goals. I am personally, you know, convinced, you know, by supporting, you know, the development of social enterprises that that they can have an impact, and that they will be able, you know, to be one of the key partners to achieve, you know, this Sustainable Development Goal. And coming back to the previous speaker, you know, I think that we really need, you know, to put a strong focus on the education. Education is key for young people. Many of them, and we have seen that, you know, at the European level, you know, they have a lot of projects. They do not know how to get finance. They do not know how to be scalable. They do not know to which business incubators, you know, they should go. So really about, you know, promoting, you know, education, you know, can help, you know, young people to create social startups, you know, and really be a tool, you know, working hand in hand with national and regional governments to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you. I had a question for Charmaine around what do you think that the immediate impact of the new law on existing and potential social enterprises in Jamaica will be? That's from Julie Pybus, Pioneers Post.
Okay, thank you. I think the immediate effect will be giving it the formal recognition that is needed, and that is important, especially to get some other critical actors in the space, such as the financiers or persons who will want to invest in the sector, to get their participation. And the other thing it will trigger is some institutional changes. So, you know, in the conversation that has been going on before, we hear about the importance for capacity building support to the sector. And that is a major thing that we are finding that is lacking in our context, where social enterprises need help, especially in terms of their governance structure, understanding, even, you know, in terms of reporting. So we will be able to trigger the kind of institutional change within some of the key government entities that can provide that kind of capacity support, but also it will allow us to have a stronger position when we approach private sector, for instance, because when we talk about access to financing, and that's another major need of the sector, we have had instances in the past where, you know, we have heard some of our social entrepreneurs say when they go to a financial institution to say, you know, they're a social enterprise, they need kind of financing. There is that they have issues there because the social enterprise is not within the remit, or is not understood by the financial institutions. So we are looking forward to having the legal status in place. We're looking forward to continuing to build the awareness and re-engaging key stakeholders such as the financial institutions and, as I said before, other actors that can provide the kind of added support to the sector.
Super, thanks, Charmaine. A question for Dan. Governments around the world play a critical role in shaping markets. Can you give us some examples of places in the world where this has been done really effectively well for social enterprises?
Yeah, I mean, I was asked this recently. There's a really, recent article by colleagues at Pioneers Post on, what are the most interesting countries in the world for social enterprise right now. And it's hard in a way because, none of us work in all the countries of the world, so we can't kind of say that's where, this country is more interesting and more exciting at the moment. We only know so much. We're very lucky to have worked in 30, 40 countries, but so we have probably as good an oversight as any. But yeah, I think the ones that came up, I think I said in that piece, it was really hard to look past France because France has had for so long a strong tradition of this, but also has laws around pensions. It has different kind of statuses. It has stuff about procurement. It has ministers and funds and officials that are dedicated to this. In the UK, we're really fortunate that we've got some really good kind of sort of measures around legislation, Social Value Act, community interest companies. We don't actually have a lot of kind of energy and momentum from individual politicians at the top of government at the moment, even though we've got some good policies in place that have been put there over the years. I mean, Southeast Asia is the other obvious place to look. I think if you look, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and then kind of other countries in the region, Vietnam, South Korea. For many years now, there's been some really interesting stuff happening in that part of the world around procurement, legal forms, taxation, funds. Indonesia as well. So certainly Southeast Asia is a part of the world that until a few years ago I didn't know a huge amount about, and I've just been so impressed and amazed to have learned what's been going on there in support of social enterprise. But yeah, equally Canada. I mentioned the kind of the level of places like Quebec and Manitoba and so on, and many different examples in different European countries. Denmark, they have a legal form that's worked a bit, and then Italy's got a history of social cooperatives, and Scotland and Wales we see kind of governments at below the level of the UK government, but at this kind of nation level of Scotland and Wales doing some really interesting things too. So yeah, there's always much as ever that we can learn from each other.
There's plenty of inspiration for people to draw on if they're at an early stage of developing things. I think it sounds, there are lots and lots of examples.
And South Africa as well.
South Africa, yes. Another question here, this is directed to you, Edwin, from Francis, asking, based on the kind of positive impact that social enterprises are offering, like creation of employment, protecting environment, etc., do you think that African governments have created an effective support system for social enterprise? And what is the one that you advise to give African governments to ensure effective support?
Yes, over the years, we've seen that there's been an increase in interest from various government institutions to making available incentives and support systems for social enterprises. Indeed, though across Africa, there is absolutely no social enterprise policy legal form for the operations of social businesses as it stands now across Africa. but we've seen a great deal of interest, be it in Ethiopia, Kenya, and to say the good Ghana here, we've done a great lot of work, bringing on board government to understand and appreciate the impact and the workings of social businesses. And I must commend our good friends at the Ministry of Trade and Industry for the great work and support that they've given us in supporting the work of social businesses. But as you know, policy work takes time. And it also requires that they also appreciate and understand, and as we indicated, through evidence, show that it is not just one of the many wishy-washy ideas that social businesses can make a great deal of impact in the whole economy. So when we engage government, it's always about bringing that value, that document that shows that the policy is just not a document, that it actually translates into great work for social businesses, that based on the incentives and support dedicated to this category of business model, that we can see measurable evidence. And that is why many a time we call on researchers, academia, and a lot of other stakeholders to come on board so that we can demonstrate value, impact via documents, via reports, where we are able to, even on annual basis, conduct the state of social enterprises as they are, and use that to demonstrate value in the whole ecosystem. But more importantly is the need for us that even in the absence of policy documents, we see social enterprises working and demonstrating value that we can use to showcase to government and any other player in the ecosystem, be it the impact investor, the financial institution, that these businesses are able to create value and also bring back returns. Because for the investor, it's always that notion that social businesses are NGOs or charity, but they don't bring back returns. So it is all these that we need to demonstrate to be it policymaker, be it an investor, that social enterprises, this model is a sustainable way of doing business. Thank you.
Yeah, good points, well made there. And we've had, and again, we've had a couple of questions from the floor around kind of broadly, measurement and measuring impact. And inevitably, that is a question that people ask. It's one that investors ask, and I guess increasingly one that consumers ask. I don't know if anybody would like to comment on that. I know there are many different models that people use for measuring impact, but would anybody like to comment on that?
If I can just maybe say something on impact measurement, we have seen indeed, that there are various methods, and I remember that it was a discussion between the stakeholders, when we were preparing the social economy action plan. Is the European Union, is the European Commission going to propose, a unique instrument, to measure impact? And the reply was no. I mean, it's important, that we take into consideration, what is happening, on the ground, and then, we build with the stakeholders, the impact that we measure, the impact, of the social enterprises. There are many items, that we should take into consideration. We have seen success stories, especially between regions in Europe, building together, some kind of impact measurements, for their project. It should attract, investors, but it should not only attract investors. It has to show that it's something that works and that will be helpful, for example, as we discussed before, for policymakers to draft, for example, legislation, or to help, social enterprise to grow.
Yeah, super. Thank you. Anybody else want to come in on that, or we do another question? No? Okay. Charmaine, I was interested when you were speaking, and I recall when we were supporting you with the intervention, how you've kind of balanced out between creating something new, but at the same time kind of balancing out registration and red tape. Could you say something about how you've managed to kind of navigate that with your stakeholders?
Okay, so so as you said, Juliet, so whereas we do have existing legislation in place, for instance, under the Companies Office of Jamaica, but we do recognize that there would be some other things that would need to be done to support that. So for instance, the decision we have made for social enterprise legal form is that they, based on the criteria and the definition, is that they would in fact register as companies limited by guarantee with share capital or without. However, we recognize that even within the Companies Office of Jamaica now, what we are going to be advocating for is some administrative reform that will now, within the context of the legal act, will now address the issues such as reporting, issues such as the financial planning and capabilities, what those things will need, will require, and some of these things would have to be added within the COJ's division to support the social enterprises when they come in now. Because one of the issues we do have now is the fact that even within the COJ, the fulsome understanding of the social enterprise and the needs of that sector and the kind of support that they will need, there are still some administrative reform that will have to be in place. So in terms of trying to balance that, we are going to be, and this is why I must mention that now that we have the Drafts Act in place, one of the things we have done is to prepare a cabinet submission, which is actually now within the ministry, and they have actually, before it goes to cabinet, they have actually sent it out for further consultation with some of the other relevant ministries, such as the Ministry of Finance. The issue of incentivizing the sector is going to be important. And so, of course, because we have been having extensive dialogues with like the Companies Office of Jamaica, so it's really looking at what are the supporting elements that will need to be put in place to further what is already existing, for instance, within the Companies Office of Jamaica, and also now looking at some of the other institutional reform. So as I spoke before about the need for the capacity support, we are talking about having training, looking at investment readiness. So, you know, we have the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange that has recently been launched, and they're looking at activating a platform that will attract equity investment specifically for social enterprises. And so there's going to be that need to prepare the institutions that will provide support, as well as the social entrepreneurs or the social enterprises. So those are some of the things. So it's increased dialoguing. It's gonna take some administrative reform to just find that balance, to just ensure that what is needed for the sector is in place.
Thanks very much, Charmaine. Great. Okay. So we are very nearly at the end of our session. Just before we close, I'd like to invite Christiane Leong from the Investment and Trade Promotion Organisation of African, Caribbean and Pacific States to share a few reflections and to provide you with some information about how any of you on the call today might be able to access support via the ICR facility. So welcome, Christiane. Or have we got a Scipion?
Hello?
Oh, Scipion, you're there. I was told it was Christiane that would be speaking. Welcome. Hi.
Yes. Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we do. Thank you. Yes, welcome.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Juliet, for giving me the floor. First, I would like to apologize for ACP will not able to join us this afternoon because of competing assignment. Then I'd like to congratulate ICR Facility for organizing this inspiring events on social enterprises. And I'd like to congratulate as well all of the presenters for this insightful presentation. I think I have learned a lot on social enterprises, on the experience from the various countries, from the EC, from the UK, Ghana, Jamaica, from our member states. For your question, how to access funding from ICR Facility? These were your, yeah, I think in the chat box, some questions like that have arisen. So I think the website for ICR Facility have been published, have been mentioned in the chat. So you need to, all of interested organization, social enterprises, they can access to they can download on the website the information on how to access the funding, and then the ICR Facility will liaise with the requester, and then they make they submit, ICR Facility submit a proposal to the OECPS Secretariat and the Commission to validate the request. Now I'm coming back to the presentation. I understand that those social enterprises, it's not so familiar yet in our member states, as it has been mentioned by Edwin from Ghana. A lot needs to be done. So we are very happy to listen to this presentation from Jamaica as well on the legal framework, institutional, and all of the challenges we are facing the social enterprises. So from the OECPS side, those kind of business, social enterprise could be encouraged. It's provide job creation for the youth, for the women, but as it is being mentioned, a lot of challenges are facing those business in social enterprises. Yeah, I agree that business support, training, skills are well needed for those kind of business. As rightly said, the representative from European Commission, they don't know where to get the funding, how to get that funding. So, because when those in social enterprises, they would like to approach partner, technical or partner or technical partner, they need to have the appropriate skill. Many days, like today, I just received the request on the ground, how to access, how to. So I always tell them, this is not easy. You need the special skills on how to draft project proposal, how to respond to call for proposal. Because as I used to say, funding is not a problem, but you need to know where and how to get that funding. So those the training session is very important on how to draft project proposal first, according to the rules from the partner. Like ici, I'm telling you, it's not easy, because here we are doing it every day. I start to understand, but it's not easy. So I encourage the improvement of the skills and the training. How to get access to the procurement? It's another pair of story. I can tell you it's not easy to submit proposals for procurement, mainly for the EC, procurement from the EC. It's lots of work. So if those people in business, social business would like to access to public procurement, there is special skills training which are available on EC EDCO website, so or at the delegation. So I encourage them, if they would like to participate in this procurement process, it's special skilled. They need to be trained. So I think this is so. I really encourage that if you can share best practice from Jamaica on institutionalization, legal framework for institutionalization, business forum, and experience from Ghana. Hello.
Yeah, we can still hear you. Sorry, I think the screen.
Okay, I'm going to I'm going to finalize.
Thank you very much, Christiane.
Okay, I'm going to finalize my intervention. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. And all that remains for me to say is a huge thank you to our brilliant panel. There is never enough time to cover all of the wonderful things that exist in their minds that are there to be shared. But I hope that's provided you with some useful thinking, some useful insights. And do feel free, please, to stay in touch, and we will try and share the recording, and are happy to follow up with any questions. But once again, a huge thank you to Edwin, to Charmaine, to Patrick, to Dan, and finally thank you to Christiane for your closing words. But thank you all very, very much for joining us today. It's been a brilliant session. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.